Let's start with the top story this morning. Prime Minister Narendra Modi is in France to co-chair the AI Action Summit along with French President Emmanuel Macron. French President Macron hosted a dinner in the Prime Minister's honor ahead of the AI Summit last evening. It was attended by several high-profile leaders, including US Vice President JD Vance, who's also in France for the same summit. The Indian diaspora in France turned out in large numbers to welcome the Prime Minister, chanting his name amidst drumbeats at the airport. The highlight of Prime Minister Modi's visit is the AI Summit, which aims to strengthen global governance of artificial intelligence. PM Modi and his foreign counterpart Emmanuel Macron will co-chair the summit, which will be joined by several global leaders as well as tech industry executives. The main aim of the engagement would be to explore AI-driven advancements for public good. Well, the summit is expected to kick off in a few hours from now. So on the show today, we'll try to find out what India's AI challenges are and what priorities should India make when it comes to both AI deployment as well as AI development. Some of the key questions that we are asking on the show today are: in this huge battle between an expensive US-based OpenAI versus a low-cost Chinese DeepSeek, has India missed the sweet spot of building its own foundational AI opportunity? Moreover, should India be limited to back-office IT efficiency using AI and really use it as a tool to be integrated along with the IT services we offer to the world? Will the Indian cost arbitrage advantage, which lasted well for the IT services industry, last long enough for AI as it develops further? Now, AI for social good is something that the government has been talking about. What exactly is that social good, and what's the roadmap for achieving it using AI? And finally, it's not just about building foundational models, but building the ecosystem. India needs skills, chips, data centers, in addition to AI models. Are we getting there, and will we get there in the right time? Joining me to discuss this and more, I have with me Manish Maheshwari as well as Anurag Ramdasan. Gentlemen, good morning. Thank you so much for joining us on this very important day. Manish, let me begin by asking you, I think, the most basic, obvious question at this point. We had the OpenAI model and we have the DeepSeek model. Has India missed its opportunity of building a large language model foundational AI opportunity? Has that been lost?
So my view here is, I think it's too early to say that the game is over. I think the game has just started. And
Okay.
I think we are going to see a lot more innovation and a lot of things will happen. India may not have been fast to move, but my view would be, it's a long game, so it will move far, I would say. And things have just started. I think there was one view, mostly in the valley here, is that building a model requires a lot of capital. Capital is the moat, and people need to have a lot of money to build this. I think what DeepSeek has shown is that what really is the moat is the creativity, and you can have a smaller investment, but you can organize and figure out things in a way which is far more creative, and you can distill the learnings from existing models and build something which gives similar or even better performance at much lower cost. So my view here is that, yeah, I mean, India needs to catch up, but the game has just started and we are going to see this thing happen. India does have several advantages, and I think it has to take care of, has to leverage that advantage. I think if you think about any kind of a AI model and other tools that are coming up, you require three things, right? One is, of course, the data sets to train.
Yeah.
And India, by virtue of its large population and I think all the Digital India mission, we are collecting huge number of data, whether it's healthcare data, agriculture data, traffic data, etc. So that data sets we have, and I think that can be used to train models which are very specific to India. The second is the algorithm or the code, which also I think in my mind, India has amazing talent and a lot of engineers and a lot of people who understand machine learning and statistical learning, and they can really build great models if they can put their attention and focus on this. The third is, of course, the GPU and the chipset. That is where I believe the government should play a much more important role and sort of prioritize that, and I think also enable an ecosystem where we start becoming self-sufficient. Having said that, no one is self-sufficient in that case. I mean, there's only one company, NVIDIA, which controls this market globally.
Yeah.
Question would be, everyone is looking for an alternative and everyone's looking for another way to do it. So India is also not far behind there. I think it's the right time. The iron is hot now. Now is the time to strike. And the fact that Prime Minister Modi himself is leading this summit and has put his face on top of it, that shows that he does accord it a national priority. And this has a significant signaling effect on everyone, right? I mean, everyone will see him talk about it, which will then cause the bureaucracy and the entire ministers to also prioritize it. It will also send the right signals to entrepreneurs and investors to sort of look at those kind of companies.
Sure.
And think about it, like DeepSeek came from nowhere. It's not a government funded or Chinese government funded entity. It's a private company which came out of hedge fund.
Yeah.
So nothing stops Indian entrepreneurs to also build something like this. It's only a matter of time. And if you look at it also among the Indian diaspora, many of them are already building it. I mean, if you look at Perplexity in the US,
Yeah.
built by an Indian. It's just that, they happen to be in the US. The question would be, how do we create a similar environment in India so that Indians living in India can also do something similar or even better?
All right. Anurag, do you share Manish's optimism? You work with startups, and what Manish is saying is that the game is afoot. The game has only just begun, and the iron is hot, and this is the time to actually strike it. But the game is also moving fast, and the catch-up that India will have to do, you catch up with one technology, and by the time you're getting somewhere there, the technology has evolved and moved into a completely different direction. So what is the kind of conversation that you are having with enterprises, with startups, and are we really on the track, if not the fast track, are we even on the race track to play the catch-up game?
Very, very good question, Karthik. So the way we think about this is, look, this is a generational shift in technology, right? This is not a 6-month long phenomena. And if you think about how this started, OpenAI was the biggest player, and then you have Anthropic, Mistral coming in. We thought the game was over. Suddenly, DeepSeek shows up. So it's, I agree with Manish that it's not a done deal. There is a lot more to play out. And look, India has also, got its own trajectory to develop in this market, right? I mean, India does not have the kind of R&D budget proportional to GDP the way other countries have. And if you look at any big technological shift, India has never been a first mover, right? So we weren't the first in, say, IT services. We weren't the first in pharmaceuticals. We weren't the first in the space race, right? But we've moved very well once we've gotten into the space, and we've become dominant player over time. And this trajectory will play out in the AI space with India also. We see a crazy amount of capital going in the last year. Over a couple of $1 billion of capital went into AI startups in India. We see a massive number of entrepreneurs building in this space, especially the entrepreneurs building in this space are thinking global from day one, which is again phenomenal. To Manish's point, we have unique data sets. We will have unique problems to solve for. So, the nature of foundational models are evolving. What problems they're supposed to solve is evolving, and India will have its own unique right to win. It will not necessarily be the same track as OpenAI or same timeline as OpenAI, but that doesn't matter. India has always sort of moved at its pace and established its credentials in these markets before.
All right. So, Manish, I want to bring a very direct question to you. What, at this stage, should be India's AI priority? Should the priority be to build its own AI models which are unique to India to solve for Indian problems, or start using the data sets that you were referring to and start deploying them for social good? So, do we have a roadmap really on what India's AI priority should be? Budgetary allocation, etc. notwithstanding, there's got to be still a roadmap, a strategic roadmap on what India really wants to achieve in its own AI tryst.
I would say it would be both, and I think government and private ecosystem have to work in partnerships. I'll tell you where the government has to play a role and where private entrepreneurs have to play a role. I think government has to create an enabling environment. I mean, in terms of like promoting, ensuring that the regulatory environment is perfect for them, they have the resources, and I think things don't slow things down. The second thing is, there's a lot of unique data sets pertaining to India that the government has. The question then becomes, how do you sort of use that and leverage that to build models that work for India and solve unique situations and unique problems specific to India, as Anurag was saying. So that's second. The third is, how do we build the kind of, urgency in the whole ecosystem around, how do we work together to make progress on this one? Now, both things have to happen, right? One is around like coming up with vertical solution to specific problems where you don't have to build the foundational models, but you can distill the learning from the models that exist and start solving very vertical specific problems. The second would be about building something which takes into account the unique needs of India, the sensitivities of India, the data sets of India. That also has to happen. And it need not require a huge amount of capital. It requires the right kind of creativity and right kind of entrepreneurial spirit to say, okay, what has already been done that we don't have to reinvent the wheel? What kind of learnings we can distill from that? And then add on to that, what kind of data we can inject pertaining to India and come out with something that solves the need of India in a much better way, not just more accurate and relevant answers, but also more cost effective, given the size of the problem and the things that we might need down the line.
Okay.
So it has to happen at multiple levels, right?
Sure. Anurag, let's get you back into this discussion. And, there are 3 or 4 key challenges that I feel India is still grappling with. Number one, the skills that Indian engineers have, the skills that India's, and India has made remarkable strides in its IT services industry, but the skills that Indians have need an upgrade. Then there is this whole question of building the entire ecosystem, and that begins with having foundries to make the semiconductors which go into chips. So Manish was mentioning NVIDIA has the global sort of monopoly on chips that go into and GPUs that go into the AI industry. But then India, despite its investments both by the government and by the private sector, the kind of chips that are going to be rolled out of India and the kind of semiconductors that are going to be rolled out of India are still many generations behind. And there's going to be a long gap and a large distance to cover before we can make relevant semiconductors that go into these GPUs. And then finally, you also have this issue of data centers. Now, while we've seen investments being announced from from Reliance to Adani and everything in between, we haven't really seen the data centers come up at the pace at which the AI industry is evolving. So there are multiple challenges. I feel perhaps we need to prioritize these and really figure out where we want to build our expertise.
No, so fair question, Karthik. So three different ways that I would split this out, right? See, on the first part which you mentioned in terms of NVIDIA having the state-of-the-art chips and India not having the capability. Look, even the larger tech companies, right, the FANGs of the world, they still procure their chips from NVIDIA. So it's not like India is lagging, right? It's more so that NVIDIA is the only player in the market who's supplying this. Even
Right.
OpenAI buys NVIDIA, Microsoft buys from NVIDIA, right? So it would be a bit of an unfair criticism on that front. The data center part, it's a very pertinent point. And I think this is where, government has the role of an enabler, of an infrastructure builder, and that's where, that role will come in handy. For example, with financial services, the government had very clear stance that you cannot host India's financial services data outside of Indian borders, right? And that led to a whole lot of data centers being built out by the large cloud providers in India. We will need similar protection for data for AI in India, and that would automatically, create the data center environment for GPUs and AI chips in India. And look, this is something that the government has done, time and time again with great effectiveness, right? I mean, the way they managed duties on certain components of smartphones, which led to manufacturing of smartphones in India.
Yeah.
I think this is where government will have its most crucial role as an ecosystem enabler, so that the roadmap can be guided in a very effective manner. And the last bit, which is what kind of talent comes in, what kind of AI applications get built. I think that's something that the startups and the venture capital ecosystem will take care of on its own, as long as the rest of the infrastructure exists, right? I mean, I don't see a challenge in terms of talent being built out. We've seen many self-taught technology entrepreneurs in the AI space in India. We see Indian IT services adopting AI services as a platform and training their workforce in India. So in just a few years cycle, India will have enough AI talent. I don't think that's something to worry about. The same way 20 years ago, in a few cycles, India just got enough tech talent. AI
Sure.
talent will follow. I don't think that's a challenge.
All right, Manish Maheshwari, you're a Mason Fellow for AI at Harvard University. Compare the learnings at Harvard to what we teach students in India. And do you think India is on the right track to build that AI-ready talent from colleges and IITs?
I think the demand will determine the supply here. I think what I would say is that, as Anurag was saying, I mean, this the talent skill set will have to change, right? If you think about it, India was predominantly a services company. It moved to a product company. We started, there was a need for product engineers, and I think people moved to that. I think even when mobile came in, there was a big dearth of like mobile engineers, people who could like sort of code on iOS and Android platforms. People learned that. So AI and sort of machine learning is no different. I think there will be tremendous demand for those kind of resources, and people would gravitate towards those careers. So the thing about India is that we have abundant talent, and I think they will get repurposed for that. It The other thing I have noticed now is that AI will also change the requirement for talent and also the future of work, right? I mean, for example, the conventional thinking was that technology and AI would sort of make the more mechanical and sort of the blue collar work redundant. But what it is coming after is the sort of the more of the office work, right? If you think about the coding work and also the sort of the work that most engineers do, that can be easily done by AI. And I think what is required now is a bit of a more higher order work, saying what should the architecture, how should something be designed. But once that decision has been taken, the actual work of actually building something can be automated away, right? So that does have implication in terms of not only the skill set required,
But even
but
the
the
job
quantity
market.
of those skills required, right? So I think so our educational ecosystem and sort of our mindset and thinking has to also evolve to take that into account. And having said that, at the same time, AI will also transform many other sectors. Like, for example, healthcare and precision delivery of like healthcare and diagnostic, that will change the way things are treated. Also, the way education is delivered can also be made more personalized and specific. We will also see things in India, for example, agriculture can be done in a different way now. With AI can bring a lot of efficiency in the wastages that is happening. So the whole ecosystem will start evolving around that. And I think the careers of tomorrow and people designing those curriculum and people and the students who are studying for those have to keep that in mind as they think about it, right? So that's where I would say, I mean, we have great talent. We require a different way of now repurposing that talent. And the talent also has to become mature in terms of, where is the best use of their time and attention and sort of their capabilities. Right.
All right. Well, let's leave it at that. Manish Maheshwari, Anurag Ramdasan, thank you so much for joining us on this very important story. Well, key highlights coming in through this conversation that India has the manpower, India has the skills, but maybe those skills need to be realigned with the AI mission. And of course, India has to double down on building its own data centers and building the whole ecosystem where AI enablement and AI development come through more organically. Well, let's leave it at that. Thank you so much for joining us.